Have you ever had times when you walked away from a conversation and had that sinking feeling of, oh, I don't know whether I should have told them all of that? Or worse, have you ever been told in a conversation that you're too much? It's a bit of a cruel reality that sometimes us ADHDers can overshare. We can give out way more information than we mean to, or even just not know when to put a pin in it. So why do so many of us ADHDers overshare? And what is the pathway to clearing up our communication? So I've been in a lot of situations where I've given far too much away than I wanted to. And this was especially before my ADHD diagnosis a few years ago. ADHDers can find themselves in positions where we can just give away far too much information. And the reason behind it is that sometimes the filter between our thoughts and our actions in our brain can be a little bit more flexible than neurotypical brains. Our mouths can work a little bit faster than it takes for our brain to kick in. And this can lead to oversharing. Now, there's nothing inherently bad about that. You can share whatever you like, but sometimes sharing a lot can backfire. Sometimes we can get a negative reaction from others, and other times we can simply assume a negative reaction afterwards. For example, have you ever had those moments where you walk away and you think, oh my God, that's so embarrassing. They hate me. They think this about me. We can often feel shame from people knowing our deepest thoughts and our vulnerabilities and our weaknesses. Now, again, there's nothing inherently wrong with being vulnerable and sharing information about ourselves, but sometimes we can deal with an emotional impact from all of this. So why does ADHD oversharing happen? Well, we can get hyper-focused on a topic. So, for example, if something really, really interests us, we can get hyper-fixated on the subject. And this means that we're more likely to keep on over-explaining our thoughts and talking about something that we're passionate about, which means that we can lose track of time when we're speaking. This is, again, part of the time blindness that us ADHDers can have. And if you want a little bit more information on time blindness, then I've got a video for you, which I'll link to above. And we can have a reduced structure to our thoughts, so we can talk impulsively. And this can lead to us talking as we formulate thoughts. So there's no structure to our thoughts. So we're kind of trying to find our point as we're talking. And we can get excited, we can get upset, we can get passionate. We as ADHDers can struggle with emotional regulation, which basically means that managing our emotions. So when we get excited, we can get superly excited. And when we feel upset, we can get super upset. So we can struggle to regulate good and bad emotions. And if we're feeling very strong emotions in the middle of saying something, then that can impact on how much we talk. And I've actually deep dived into emotional dysregulation, which I'll link to in a video above. This means that we can get overly excited, overly upset, and we can overshare. We can give more information than we were kind of planning on giving. So what is the pathway to clear communication? What can we do to rein in the times when we don't want to give as much information as we are giving? So before we do get into it, if you do want deeper dives on ADHD, relationships, and communication, then make sure you subscribe for new videos every single week. So the first thing that we can do is we can start finding an outlet for our self-expression. So when it comes to oversharing, a lot of it can be thoughts that are kept inside of our head that we kind of just want to get out. But if you have an outlet to be able to externalize these thoughts before you head into conversations, then it can actually reduce you oversharing. So imagine you have a cup that is filled to the top with water, and that water is your thoughts. If you wander around with that cup filled with water, then inevitably it's going to start to spill out a little bit here and there. Whereas if you empty your cup beforehand, then it reduces the risk of the cup spilling as you walk around. So the thing that I recommend to all of my clients is to start externalizing, whether it's a structured journal or writing music or vlogging, whatever it is, giving yourself an outlet that helps you to get your thoughts out on a regular basis, so that as you come into conversations with other people, you've already externalized and processed those thoughts beforehand, which makes it less likely for those thoughts to spill out into other conversations. Especially before big, important conversations can be an easy way to clear up what you do and you don't want to say. So before sharing something that you might regret later, start writing it down, and this can help serve as a buffer, giving you time to decide if it's something that you truly want to share or you want to keep to yourself. And taking the time to reflect on this externalization can help to identify patterns in what triggers your oversharing. Next is to start implementing the 3-second rule. When you feel the urge to share something, count to 3 slowly before you actually say anything. Using these moments in conversation to ask yourself, is this relevant? Is this beneficial to the conversation? How might sharing this make the other person feel? Practicing and getting into the habit of pausing before you make any sort of responses in a conversation is a really, really crucial conversation skill. Developing awareness of your own boundaries. Sometimes as ADHDers, we can have quite porous boundaries, which means that we have these ideas of boundaries that we would like to keep, but we're very flexible with them. We think to ourselves, this is something that I don't want to share. And then we overstep our own boundaries and share it anyway. So just become aware of the things that you start to overshare and the things that you don't want to. And if you're unsure about this, ask others. Start taking feedback from other people, friends, family members that know you, and ask them. Maybe say to them, hey, I don't really want to share a lot about these things. In conversations, do you find that I overshare about this? Take in that feedback from friends and family and start to think, how could I have got my thoughts out more effectively in those conversations? So this can be a good learning lesson to get some sort of external self-awareness, but don't rely on others to start developing that self-awareness yourself. Next is to replace shame with acceptance. We can feel a lot of shame when we reflect on oversharing and we think to ourselves, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. I'm so embarrassed. I feel so bad about myself. I feel bad for giving that burden to the other person. Shame is a really, really powerful emotion and it can be overwhelming. But I heard a really good analogy for ADHD oversharing. And this can be described as, imagine you're a single cooking pot on a stovetop with a dodgy dial. And what we're trying to do is an individual cooking pot. We're trying to cook at the same rate as other people. So there's nothing necessarily wrong with it. We just have to be a little bit more aware of the dodgy dial when we're cooking with other pots. We just got to make sure that we keep an eye on the dial to make sure that everything is cooking at the same time. You don't want to cook too quickly, but you also don't want to cook too slowly. It's just mid-conversation, keeping an eye on that dial and finding the balance of how much is appropriate to share and how much is appropriate to keep to yourself. Remember, there is no perfect cooking temperature. It's going to be different for every single conversation. So the ups and downs of oversharing and undersharing is simply a matter of figuring out the cooking speed of everyone around you. So next time you do speak, bear this in mind next time around, and it'll be a little bit easier. And feel free to role play scenarios with a therapist, a friend, a coach, giving yourself a safe space where you can practice conversations where you might be tempted to overshare. This role playing can help you to become a bit more comfortable with pauses in conversation and get some feedback on your sharing habits. And when it comes to this is something that I work on with my ultra normal members. And if you want to join us, then I invite you to join the free bootcamp, which I'll link to in the description down below. With that being said, you are not rude or too much, but sometimes people may interpret your actions that way. Everyone has been through different kinds of experiences. And if someone does tell you that you're being rude, simply empathize. There's a million reasons why someone could find you rude, and there's a million reasons why someone can find you an absolute delight. So instead of getting defenses or trying to justify yourself that you have ADHD, just remember that it's okay. It's okay that somebody else thinks that. Hell, you can even lean into it and validate them. You can say, you know what, I can totally see what I did just then could have seemed like I wanted to trample over your point. Sorry about that. Please continue what you were saying. Validating people's feelings is not agreeing and saying, I feel the same way. It's simply saying, hey, I can understand why you'd think that way. And that's okay. One of the most effective ways to reduce oversharing is learning how to structure your thoughts. And the way you can learn how to structure your thoughts is by doing something called thinking in frameworks. And I've actually done a deep dive video on thinking in frameworks communication, which I will leave you with right here. I'll see you over there.